bottom line is the stargates are opening. Even the clouds, the National Oceanographic Administration saying something's happening. The clouds, the normal clouds that used to be at a specific height, are lowering and they're dissipating. That's true. Whatever God made is being taken away. The chemtrails are terraforming the Earth, but that's another story. How do the aliens fit in? Just do a 5-minute, 10-minute just thing, because I don't think people understand that when the Vatican made its, I'm going to love the word, quantum shift to now embrace what they usually teach are demons. And by the way, I was in contact with one of the most prominent sorcerers, an elderly gentleman for the Vatican, so I know from his position what he sees taking place. But so this is a quantum change. Chris dealt with Jerusalem being a critical part of the move, but also how do the aliens fit in? And I'm not trying to take away from Petrus Romanus, but my guess is that they're kissing cousins, okay?
Okay, well, I'll go there then. I just want people to know that when they read the book Petrus Romanus, it's not going to be about aliens.
No, I understand that. I understand that, and I'm not trying to take away from it. When we go to the questions, we'll go specifically to that, but I think, look, we only got 15 minutes before we go to the questions, okay? And okay. I'm getting emails asking me to ask you that, because there are people that have listened to you, are now being, introduced to Chris, but have listened to me, and they're saying, okay, I'm starting to get it now. So if you just want to take 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking.
All right, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay, and so let me just jump really far forward and just say this. The rabbit hole goes very deep, right?
Yep.
And I will do published work on this probably this year, in which I'm going to show the world interdisciplinary works from the Vatican, in which they are explaining how mankind could soon be evangelized, that's their word, during contact with spiritual aliens. I know that sounds extraordinary. If people want to email me, I'm glad to send them the actual publications from some of the highest placed astronomers inside the Vatican, in which they are talking about us soon being greeted by extraterrestrial civilizations, and how we will need to respect those intelligences who are going to have, according to these documents from the Vatican, they're going to have, let's say, a higher level of understanding of God. And the reason is because they're not fallen, according to this theology. We're fallen. They're not. They're closer to God than we are. And therefore, they're going to have a non-terrestrial intelligence that offers better understanding of the relationship between God and the whole of creation. And that, and by the way, let me just quote this document from the Vatican. This quote, this would not immediately oblige the Christian to renounce his own faith in God simply on the basis of the reception of new, unexpected information of a religious character from extraterrestrial civilizations, but such a renunciation could come soon after as the new religious content originating from outside the earth is confirmed as reasonable and credible. Once the trustworthiness of the information has been verified, let me stop for a moment in this quote and ask if anybody can explain to me how it could be verified. How would you verify an extraterrestrial message? This really kind of sets me aside. Anyway, the believer would have to reconcile such new information with the truth that he or she already knows and believes on the basis of the revelation of the one and triune God, conducting a rereading of the gospel inclusive of the new data, end quote. So how this information is going to be confirmed as reliable is beyond me. How this more complete ET gospel is going to de-emphasize or significantly modify our understanding of salvation through Jesus Christ, this is something that's also beyond me. But you have Vatican observatory directors from Christopher Corbali, for instance, in his article, What If There Were Other Inhabited Worlds, concluding that Jesus simply might not remain the only word of salvation. That's his words. Quote, I would try to explore the alien by letting it be what it is without rushing for a classification category, not even presuming two genders, Corbali said. And then he drops this bombshell, quote, while Christ is the first and last word, the Alpha and Omega spoken to humanity, he is not necessarily the only word spoken to the universe. For the word spoken to us does not seem to exclude an equivalent word spoken to aliens. They too could have had their Logos event, whatever that event might have been. It does not have to be a repeated death and resurrection. If we allow God more imagination than some religious thinkers, i.e., by the way, let me insert here, Steve Quayle, Tom Horn, Chris Putnam, et al., some religious thinkers seem to have, for God as omnipotent is not restricted to one form of language, the human, end quote. So what we have are very high-ranking spokespersons for the Vatican who, in recent years, including 2011, and we'll see what they say in 2012, are offering language acknowledging, first of all, the likelihood of extraterrestrial intelligence, and secondly, a dramatic role that ET's introduction to human civilization is going to play in regard to altering established creeds about anthropology, philosophy, religion, redemption, but specifically a rereading of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And by the way, this could be consequential to the very near future. So is that kind of what you wanted me to say, Steve?
Absolutely. And Chris, I think this is critical too, because, from your perspective of writing, co-authoring and doing all your investigation, I'd like you to address that too, if you wouldn't mind, in 5 minutes. It won't hurt us to take an extra 5 minutes. And again, you guys, I'm not trying to assign, but we've just been on almost for 3 hours, and where'd the time go,
That's what they all say about Omega Man Radio.
Yep.
So, Steve, were you asking me about my opinion on the alien question?
I'm asking you about the change in the theology of basically the Catholic hierarchy and in relationship to the alien. Basically, what they're undermining, if the basic Bible is there's no name given under heaven at which a man can be saved. So I want your take on that, because again, you are a man who gets in and delves into things. And so, please address that issue.
Well, I'll tell you, what Tom just said is very disturbing. I mean, anybody that's talking about changing the gospel, I mean, that, the Apostle Paul said in Galatians, if I or an angel from heaven preach another gospel to you, let them be accursed. So, I mean, biblically, there's absolutely no way we should accept anything like what he was just talking about. I think it's really kind of strange the way the Vatican has been talking about, that's a subject that I follow and I'm interested in. It's also one that's really hard to parse, because there's so much bad information, and there's so many people that hoax UFO things and things like that it's really hard, to find out what's real. But I followed the subject very, very closely. One of the things that in the research for this book that that I was really shocked to discover was, how the Marian apparition kind of fits in to Catholic theology. And, that is one way that I can see some kind of intersection perhaps with UFOs. And it might be another thing that, you were mentioning earlier, you were talking about Islam, and, and we're also talking about this third temple thing. Now, one of the things that I think is a live possibility is, we're talking about, a religion of Antichrist in Jerusalem and a third temple, and somehow a one world religion, is what's predicted. Now, what could possibly unite Judaism, Catholicism, and Islam under one temple? I mean, that seems literally impossible with the way things are today. But if you had something come in from outside, like an alien presence or something like that, that says, here we are, and preaches this peaceful new gospel that Tom was mentioning there, I could see how that might unite all the world religions under this new thing. That's a live possibility. It's going to take something that powerful. Now, the apparition is making these kind of statements, though. I mean, I did a whole chapter on the Marian apparition in the book, and in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, the apparition's appearing and calling itself Our Lady of the Nations, and it's talking about uniting the world. Okay, and we look at the prophecies in the book of Revelation, and we see that, Revelation 17 is talking about this one world religion all coming together. And, what could do that? It's interesting that the Muslims also venerate Mary. Okay, and, that seems to be an intersection between these two, classically opposing faiths that could actually bring them together. Now, I don't know how that's going to play out, but it could actually intersect with this thing that Tom's talking about, with the Vatican hinting at alien presences. Now, it's going to take something external and something really huge to get the world's attention to unite everybody under one leadership and one faith. And, I think that is something that we can't exclude, because it seems like, possibly that is the strong delusion that the Apostle Paul talked about in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2.
I agree with you on that. Absolutely. Hey, Chris, one thing you might factor in, too, I think is fascinating. Fatima, the visions of Fatima, which is obviously a city in Portugal, but what is Muhammad's daughter's name?
Yeah.
Right.
So I made this statement, you guys, and of course, obviously my fans didn't appreciate it 15 years ago, but I said I can literally see how that's going to merge together, because, look, you've got the whole concept. You've got the Islamic, and boy, I wish some of these generals in our Pentagon would get their acts together, because they don't understand the theology, the ideology of Ahmadinejad, when he believes that if it's not, his exact words were, if 50 million Iranians have to be martyred to bring on the Imam Mahdi, then so be it. Well, now you've got everybody working together, so I think it's fascinating, okay? Just that I don't believe there are any coincidences. And remember, you quoted Galatians a minute ago, and what's neat, Chris, about that, that's the only time I see Paul saying something twice. He says, let him be accursed. Again I say unto you. Remember that?
Yeah, he does.
That double, if you will, in the mouth, 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established. But that doesn't happen that much in either the Old or New Testament. And when it does, I mean, it's like God saying, listen, I have esteemed my word above my name, and he's putting his hallmark on it. So I just want to throw that in, because obviously, look, there are seducing spirits. There are people that literally believe, they sit down in a seance, call up the spirit of Uncle George. It's not Uncle George. The Bible teaches give a man once die and once a judgment, but it's a familiar spirit, a spirit that is familiar with them. So now, Tom, and I think that, boy, I wish we could do another show on Stargate, you guys, because here's the thing. You, Tom, made that statement, and the gates of hell will not prevail. Until you said that to me, it wasn't time for me to embrace that, and that was at that exact moment so many years ago, and now all we see is so many attempts to open the gates. By the way, there are 72 gates. There are 72 stargates. There are 72 goetic demon gates. There are 72 ionospheric heaters like HARP. We're seeing all the 72, and for the record, there are 72 fusion centers in the United States, okay? The combination of all the intelligence gathering and law enforcement, 72. That number is throughout. So I think, Chris, the point that you're bringing up is absolutely critical for the people listening tonight. And look, every time I do a talk radio program, and bless you both for coming on, and we'll take the questions or whatever in a few minutes, but I know this. I know, what can I say to the people? And this is how I get to the bottom line, you guys. It may sound not the right way to say it, but if I could say to the people of God, and I knew that today was my last night, what would I tell them? That's what I try and bring into into a conversation like this. And Tom, that's why I took you to the bottom line, okay? Sometimes as researchers, I mean,
Gentlemen, excuse me 1 second, please. Folks, we're going into the 4th hour to hear it.
Well, I think it's critical that if this is the last thing, we have to bring people to the lateness of the hour. I think we've lived in the indefinite prophetic long, and now we're in it's happening now. So Tom, it's not, listen, if the guy croaks, forgive me, Ratzinger gets knocked off, murdered, assassinated, I mean, this thing can come so quick, and I think that we don't set time, but we can look at the events, and the fact that you guys wrote the book at this time, and all the headlines are basically, you were ahead of the headlines, that has to tell me that the time clock is punched, and we're on accelerated events being fulfilled right before our eyes. Hey, Bruce, let's take a break now, and then that'll be our last break before the end of the show.
Okay, gentlemen, we're going to take about a 5-minute break, and we're going to be back, and we're streaming still live, folks, at omegamanradio.com.